Welcome to the Totum Podcast. My name is Tim Irvine, and I'm here with Dr. Stacey Irvine. We are your hosts. Totum, for those of you who don't know, is a health, wellness, and performance facility here in Toronto, and we are happy to educate you about really good quality information, because in the world of the internet, there is an overabundance of bad information, and we just want to help you, like we help our clients, cut through that bad information to great stuff. Should let you know that we record in a live gym, so if you hear any banging or music or people grunting loudly, it's just because they're working hard in our facility. And we also have a great sponsor. It's called Totum. So thanks to Totum for sponsoring this podcast.
That joke's going to get old soon.
No way. You just keep hammering away at
we'll
it.
Just keep
it just
doing
gets
it.
funnier. And today, our first repeat guest is Dr. Tamara Kung, naturopathic doctor, and we are thrilled to have you back. Welcome back.
Thank you. Excited to be back.
Today, we are starting a recovery series with the first part one being talking about sleep and its impact on recovery. And I think to start things off, we should try to understand what is recovery and how does it help us as humans.
Mm-hmm. So recovery is a very generic term that most people are just touting here and there. But when we talk about recovery and its actual function, is what we're looking to achieve is like full restoration of physical and mental capacities. And from an athletic performance or even a cognitive performance, you want to be actually excelling or achieving greater outcomes after you've worked hard. You want the benefits and your recovery process to bring you up to the next level. So that's how we want to talk about like optimizing recovery. We don't want to just sit at flat line or baseline for more. So this is, one of the most potent forms of recovery is going to be our sleep, and we'll talk about all the details and the data supporting that. But I find it so funny, sleep is such an underrated topic, and something that the science is really trying to highlight these days in the past 10 years. But we work hard. We push hard in the gym. People are obsessed with nutrition and trying to achieve all the gains. I got to get my pre-workout in. I got to get my protein in so that I can get all this muscle and strength and endurance. But then it all falls apart when we don't sleep. And so this is one of the funniest things, is that we've grown up in a culture and a society that's really undermined the importance of sleep. And so I'm really happy to be talking about this topic and kind of reiterating that sleep is really what we should think about, our superpower. It's kind of like our secret weapon to everything that we do. So this is one of the things that the Guinness World Record, I find this is a funny example. They let people do all kinds of crazy things in the world. So one of my favorite ones is they let a guy float up into outer space in a hot air balloon and free fall 128,000 feet back down to Earth, breaking the sound barrier with his bare body, something that space shuttles use special metals for, right?
Oh my God.
So Guinness World Record lets you do crazy things like that, but there's no allowance or tolerance for any sleep deprivation records. No one's allowed to even attempt that, because they deem being sleep deprived more dangerous to your health, more risky cause of death, than jumping from a hot air balloon from outer space. So
that really puts it in perspective.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Okay, so I'm going to preface my question with a little bit of history. So I'm thrilled that we're talking about this. Believe it or not, I did a big sleep project in my undergrad in kinesiology, which would be 1980.
Don't do it.
1980.
Oh, it's in the early 2000s.
1989-ish, around there.
That's when I was born.
Yeah, right? Okay. So I've been studying this since you were born. Oh my goodness. Okay, so I did a study on circadian rhythms, circadian rhythms, however you want to say that, and I found it fascinating. And then when I was doing my undergraduate in chiropractic college, there was a study that came up in one of our courses, and I believe it was pathology. And believe me, in those courses, I was sometimes very tired, and I would have huge coffees, and I wasn't paying the most attention. And then all of a sudden this study came up, and it was the Kodak study. And it's from many, many years ago, and it's from the Kodak factory, and where they looked at the incidence of cancer in the group that worked the night shift compared to the incidence of cancer in the group that worked the day shift. And of course, you can imagine what they found is that it was many-fold increased in the group that did the night shift. And so I remember as a student thinking, well, of course, sleep is so important and it's so important to our health, but not just the things that we think about, energy and recovery and all those things. It's so crucial to actually keep us alive, because we know that people on shift work, there's also some really interesting research in the airline industry where there's actually a lawsuit because, again, the groups that were regularly flying through the night and, really messing up their circadian rhythms and flying through different time zones had also a very high incidence of cancer in those groups. And so they were circling back and saying, the airlines are responsible for this and for our treatment and all of those things that they had to go through because of that. So there is a question in here. So based on that and based on how detrimental we know lack of sleep is, what are your thoughts about that tie-in to essentially cancer and death? Like, what did you find? I know you've just been researching this because you're doing talks on it now. So tell me, what are some of the things that you found? I'm kind of interested into where the research has evolved.
Right. So how cancers can start or kind of proliferate in our body is when we look at the environment of our body system. The kind of environment that cultivates cancer is one that's inflammatory, right? And so we've talked about this before in our previous podcasts and talks. Chronic inflammation is basically a fertilizer for every chronic disease, things like cancer as well.
Yeah.
And so when we're sleep deprived, we are accumulating inflammation, right? When we are sleeping, that's the only time our body is ever healing and repairing and kind of flushing out, lowering inflammation again, because just the act of creating energy to live, right, creates a little bit of toxicity and inflammation. And that's why sleep has been preserved for hundreds of thousands, millions of years in every species that exists today, because despite it being a very disadvantageous state of being, we still need it for life, as you said, because that's how we refresh and clear out our system so that our body's not chronically bombarded by damage and inflammation that's going to basically make all of our cells go haywire or every organ system start to fail. Brain is a big one that's also coming up into light, and its association with Alzheimer's and being sleep deprived,
right,
and mental health as well. Right?
That's interesting that you tied in inflammation, because I have never thought about it that way. And I like that. That makes it very simple for me to think about. I've thought about it as restoration and recovery, of course. Mm-hmm. But I didn't think about the inflammation piece, which really helps, give you a good kind of visual of what's going on inside your body when you sleep. Mm-hmm. I went to another lecture a while ago where they talked about the brain during sleep and almost picturing that there's a full washing situation going on in your brain. So there's a couple things. There's the pruning, mm-hmm, which is, kind of getting rid of all the extra information that we've brought in that we don't need. But then also like a full body cerebral spinal fluid washing, mm-hmm, that's happening while we're in certain stages of our sleep. And then obviously, if you think about it in a really kind of just fundamental logical way, if you're not getting into those stages and you're not getting that washing, mm-hmm, that's bad. We can think about it like, what if we never washed our clothes? That would be bad, mm-hmm, right? And our brain is a lot more important, yeah, than our clothes.
Totally.
So
yeah,
our oldest Matt has not washed his clothes, and he's been at university for a year and a half. He seems to be okay.
He's going to bring back his piles of laundry during Christmas vacation.
For sure he will. Yeah.
But I think that's a really brilliant way to think about it. And physiologically, like our brain opens up, like it dilates a little bit and it flushes everything out. So how I like to imagine that is when you're sleeping, and only when you're sleeping, do the garbage trucks kind of come throughout the cities of your brain, right? It picks up all the trash and clutter, right? So that when you wake up, the roads are clear, you can get to point A to B like really efficiently, smooth, no stress, right? But if you don't sleep enough and the garbage trucks do not come out, then you're getting piles of garbage in your city, and like it's a mess. Like you're frustrated to move around the city, you can't get there efficiently. It takes a lot longer to be productive with work, or you might get set off more quickly. So there's a lot of studies showing that your tolerance to stress, for example, gets completely shot when you're sleep deprived, especially that last REM part of your sleep is where we kind of put things into perspective and kind of help us balance our mood and our resilience that way. So clear your cities, like let your brain have all the garbage removed.
Do that laundry.
Do that laundry, please.
Well, and practically speaking, everybody understands what it feels like to have a bad sleep. I think the only people that may not are the chronically poor sleepers. They just always feel the same way. And I remember a client of mine, he was diagnosed with sleep apnea and he got a CPAP device. And he came in one day and he was like, I slept 8 hours straight. And this is a person that would sleep 5 interrupted hours at best. And he was like, I thought I was, I haven't done cocaine, but it was like, if I had done cocaine, that's what it would feel like. I had so much in it. I thought, like, if I always felt this way, oh my God, I could tackle the world. Yeah. So I think that that's a really, really good way for people to understand. If you normally sleep fine, and you have a bad sleep, that's bad, right? You feel terrible as a result of it.
Yeah, and you don't know until you get that good amount of sleep. And, some people will tell me, Tamara, like, I don't need to work on my sleep. I get, 5 hours a night and I'm like a powerhouse. Like they're killing it. They're super they're doing a bunch of side projects on top of their projects and they're athletic and everything. And what studies show is, there are some people are genetically predisposed to survive on less than the required 7 to 9 hours of sleep, right? And those are very fortunate people because they get a little bit more time in their day to do things, which we all want. But the proportion of people who actually have that genetic change is 0.03% of the human population. Wow. So
that was going to be my next question is like, what kind of numbers are we talking about? Like, I know it's clearly not me.
I think you have a better chance of winning the lottery maybe.
Wow. Than being one of these people.
So that just goes to reiterate what you're saying, Tim. Like most people are functioning at a baseline that's not their best, right? So I'm not telling you like, yes, you have to sleep 7 to 9 hours. I just want you to do an experiment, like be curious to see what it feels like. And I ask my patient to do a test. Like I'm saying, go 1 week with 7 hours as your baseline. Go the next week with 8 hours. And then go the next week with 9. And see where you feel best, right? And so that's where you can find your sweet spot. But if we don't intentionally give ourselves the time or space to just feel the difference, we will never know. And we'll live our entire life like not actually feeling like we're on free cocaine.
and those people that genetically need less sleep, if they have their full complement of whether it's 5 or 6 hours, they feel like I might feel when I have 8 hours of sleep. Is that fair to say?
Exactly. They're functionally, their biochemistry is totally fine. Their markers of inflammation don't go up or anything. Like they're healthy. Yeah.
And so that's maybe something interesting for people to do as well. If they're unsure, then go through that process that you talked about. Test your inflammation as you're going through them to get a sense. Like maybe you don't feel any different, but if some of those markers are up because you're not getting enough sleep, that's a good objective way to find out.
Yeah, and the blood test for that you can ask for is a HSCRP. So that's a chronic inflammation marker that's more sensitive.
That's great. That's super helpful. In my book, there's a whole chapter on sleep. So you know that I feel very strongly about these things because it is a human instinct, of course. And there's
a book called Your Better Instincts?
It is called Your Better Instincts.
Yeah, that's good.
Available now.
At Totum.
Sponsored by
Totum. Just gets funnier all the time. One of the things when I was researching this that I found super interesting is there's a quote from LeBron James. And of course, if you looked at a human being that really knew how to do recovery and how to put everything together and perform at the highest level possible for many years, like how many years do you think he's been playing now?
Oh, he's close to 20.
Close to 20 years in the NBA. Wow. And still top, which is pretty amazing too, because you kind of see them up and then, as they get older, he's still very, substantial, influential player. So his quote was very interesting because he's tried everything. And he said, it doesn't matter all the Normatec devices I use, all the types of therapy I use. He said, I need that 9 to 10 hours of solid sleep to feel amazing coming into my, next game or training situation and all of that. And that is something that, because, I'm coaching at U of T, which with young athletes who are growing, and we have the high performance situation going on at Totum as well. And you and I have been involved in these conversations. And I know you're doing a talk at U of T next week about sleep, that when you're putting all this work into the training, and we could call all of us, athletes in the human race, essentially, that there's all this effort that we're putting in, but if we don't get the adequate sleep, we're really not getting the benefits from the work that we're putting in, whether it's cognitive or whether it's actual training, which is what we're going to be talking with these athletes about. And it's something that I emphasize all the time. And so many of the athletes who are growing think that they need 7 or 8. Some of them get 5. Like some teenagers only get 5 because their work demands of school and training are so much. And those are the ones, of course, I'm treating them because they're injured, because they're only getting 5 hours sleep. I'm recommending to these athletes 9 to 10 to 11 on the weekends because of the growing and the training. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so adolescents especially, like their baseline, even for non-athletes, is like 9 to 10 hours, right? Good. So what studies are showing is for example, if you're a runner, we're talking about the track team next week. If you're a runner, for every mile that you run, you should be adding half an hour of sleep to that.
Wow.
Right? So, and for like the basketball players, like that's why LeBron probably sleeps 9 to 10, whereas the average adult's like maybe 7. But he's training so hard that he has to tack on an additional half an hour for whatever period of intensity. So yeah, that's huge. And when you talk about athletes, like for basketball players, for example, like if they get 10 plus hours of sleep, their shooting accuracy goes up by like 19%, right? Wow. But if they get less than 7, it drops down to like 53%. Like it's insane how much sleep impacts your physical performance. And I feel so awful sometimes because these kids or these people are spending so much time training, right? They're grinding it out. And when we don't sleep, you don't reap the full benefit of like that muscle gain, that growth that only happens during sleep. That strength is lost, right? And also as you said, the cognitive part, I think people don't really pay attention to, is like the way you learn that muscle memory gets lost as well, right? Because that's huge.
Do you know Dr. Matthew Walker?
Yeah.
Okay. Did you listen to this podcast on motor skill development?
No, I don't think I saw that one.
So he's an expert in sleep, and he's got his own podcast. So listen to this episode, and it was all about motor skill development. So he's done research on this, and it was sparked by this pianist that he was talking to after a performance. This guy said, I always struggle at night trying to get this piece, and then when I wake up in the morning, I can play it. And so this is the research was based on. So the motor skill development gets locked in when you have adequate amounts of sleep. So his theme was, it's not practice makes perfect, it's practice plus sleep makes perfect. And then he goes into the sort of the detail of what part of the brain they've watched that actually locks this in. And it's always the sleep, it's the phase 2 non-REM sleep that is like basically in the morning, close to before you wake up. That is what locks it in. And that's the sleep that gets chopped off, right? So you go to bed too late and you don't have enough time, so you get up early. or you get up earlier. So some of those people who are real high performers, they go to bed at the right time, but they get up at 4:30 or 5 o'clock to make sure they get their workout in. And so it was really, really fascinating to hear this. Like, this is, if you're trying to do some physical thing better, that sleep is really important in getting you better faster.
Right, and that's the hard thing that we're hoping to see change in the future is the school start times, right? For kids.
A couple have changed, and it's really important. And now we have what's called late start, probably once or twice a month, but it's only one day of the week.
Okay.
But it's a start at least. And yeah, that is fascinating. I'm wondering, so we're all in agreement here, of course, that we need, you'd say 8 to 9.
For an adult, or
for us.
7 to 9 for adults.
7 to 9 for us. And let's go through maybe your top things to make sure that we have a good night's sleep.
So ideally we could wake up and not need an alarm. That's how we can kind of really reap the benefits of that last phase of our sleep we mentioned. So having good sleep actually starts at the beginning of your day. So this is where we talk about that circadian rhythm piece. And right now, we are creatures of the light. When we go back to the very beginning of time, every organism, the biggest exposure we've had is the light of day and night, right? And so it is hardwired in our genes to be responding to this. And we're seeing really cool science on how light impacts different physiological changes in our body, right? So when we talk about syncing your circadian rhythm, how I want us to think about our circadian rhythm is like a conductor of an orchestra, right? So we've got all these organs and things happening in our body, and if there was no conductor that was keeping everyone in check, it would be like an orchestra where every instrument's playing like whenever they want, however loud they want. It would just sound awful, right? And so in our body, if that happens, it makes us feel like kind of like uncomfortable, unsettled, anxious, tired, like it's just not coordinated, right? So if we have a conductor that's on point, and helping bring in the organs as they need to be functioning, we get this beautiful harmony, this beautiful sound that comes out. And that's what we want to do, is we want to sync our circadian rhythm. We want to sync up our conductor in a sense. And the most powerful way to start syncing up that conductor is daylight. Right? So daylight is number one in terms of getting your circadian rhythm like on point. So we try to get daylight as soon as we wake up. So I say get up and like open the curtains, right? Have your coffee by a window. Studies show if you're within 6 feet of a big window, you're getting enough daylight to trigger that circadian rhythm. That blue light is what we need to start our clock, right? Better yet, if you can go outside, and when you're outside, maybe go for a walk, because movement is the second big trigger of our circadian rhythm. So Tim, I know you go for a run in the morning, like that's excellent, right? That combines light and movement together. It's a very potent force. And then the third big trigger is eating something, right? So having some kind of food starts our clocks and internal systems as well. So those are 3 components that, having good sleep starts how in the beginning of the day, when we set that clock, that circadian rhythm going. And then what happens is we start the timer essentially for the rest of our day. And as that timer progresses, it tells our body when to produce melatonin. That is our hormone of sleepiness, or our hormone of darkness, right? So as we move throughout the day, this melatonin starts to rise in our body, and this is what signals to our body to feel sleepy around 8, 9, 10 p.m., right? And our own body's melatonin is a really potent force. A lot of people take the supplement melatonin, which is really great. Studies show to help with you falling asleep, so reducing the onset of sleep. But it's not so good, the supplement, at keeping you asleep. Okay, there's still a lot of interruptions despite taking melatonin supplements. But your own endogenous melatonin that you produce is of high quality, and it helps you fall asleep and also stay asleep. So ideally, I would like us to be making our own melatonin to give us the best quality and duration of sleep. So at nighttime, melatonin starts to rise, and if all goes well, nothing impairs or blocks that melatonin, we will more than likely have a really good good sleep that restores our body, cognitive and physical health, right? Unfortunately,
I'm just going to say, I'm ready for the list of what screws it up.
it's
all the things I like
all
to
the
do.
things. It's I'll keep it simple for you, Stacey. It's just blue light.
Okay.
So blue light makes melatonin dissipate, evaporates melatonin. Blue light.
So that's mostly, is that screens?
Every screen. Every device.
TV included?
TV included, phones, computers, everything, and even overhead lights.
So if we
Phones?
like, this is the tough thing because at night, now it's dark here at 6:45 p.m.
Yeah.
So if we're out camping or farming 200 years ago, we'd be going to sleep because
Around 8.
It's dark,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So we don't do that now. That's not practical for our society. If I wore clear blue light glasses watching TV, does that help with my melatonin?
No.
Tamara,
Sorry.
that is not what I wanted to hear.
That's a really good question though, because the blue light blocking glasses, I use them actually, but the clear lenses only block 15% of the blue light. Whereas the orange ones, I should have brought them in. I'm going to bring them to my talk. The orange lenses block 98% of the light. So you kind of have to go Bono on us and put on the colored lenses.
Okay.
Because that's what's going to protect your melatonin best.
What about blue blockers? That's a brand. And we're going to get them to sponsor the podcast.
I use Swanwick. They could sponsor us as well.
I have no idea if they actually do. What's the name of it? They actually fit
Blue
over
blockers?
your regular glasses, so they're like these huge.
They're from the 90s,
Yeah.
I swear.
That's
Our
awesome.
parents had
Yeah,
them.
she'd know because she was in university in the 1980s.
Can we all wear our glasses, like
That's
the blue
just boring.
blockers, on our talk next week?
That'd
We
be
should
awesome.
we should do a picture with it.
Okay, I've got one last question, and it's sort of what are the practical things that people will feel differently if they get the right amount of sleep? And I know we're not talking about one night. Like, you basically, if you sleep well over the course of 4 weeks, you should feel what?
Much more patient, kinder to people. That's a big one, where you don't feel like you're getting so frustrated and overwhelmed so easily. So that's when I see a lot of my patients say, like, I feel way more like relaxed and less stressed by the little things. It puts things into perspective. So I think that's a huge one that a lot of us need a little bit more of in our life.
Yeah, totally.
The
Especially
other one,
right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The other ones are definitely like energy. Like, I've got energy and motivation to work out, right? Like, that's
Right.
a big one, because that's a positive cycle that we can build. If you get good sleep and that gives you energy to move more,
Right.
like, that's just only going to bring you up even further, right? Then it's going to help you
Improve
sleep
your
better.
health.
And,
Yeah.
it's just like great. So that's another really big benefit I see in my patients. And then the last one is definitely like the cognitive focus and attention. A lot of people tell me, I can't focus, or like, I'm just so unproductive with work. And when you're sleeping, like, yeah, you can look at something, work on something, and just like do it, versus feeling like you're too tired or brain fogged to like execute well, right?
Interesting. Well, I know that athletes take steroids because there's not some magic to it. It just allows them to recover a lot faster and work harder the next workout. So if you're sleeping better, you're going to be recovered better, able to work out harder the next workout. Still need to do it appropriately, but it will be
Superpower,
beneficial.
like Tamara said.
It's a superpower.
Okay,
And it's free.
It's free. I have one last question. Have you figured it out? Like, would you say that with your glasses and with your routines, have you got it? Like,
It's been a journey.
Okay.
It's been a journey. But how I do it is I do like a 3-2-1 kind of thing. So I stop eating 3 hours before bedtime.
Okay.
My bedtime's around 10:30.
Okay.
Right? And then 2 hours before I put on my blue light glasses, or I'm screen free. That's
Okay.
ideally, right?
Yeah.
If I have to do work, I'll put on the glasses.
Okay.
And then 1 hour before bed, I usually start doing like one thing, like either reading or chatting with my family, or just crochet. I crochet at
I
night.
love that.
So do I, actually.
No.
What are you making right now?
A doily.
I can't. Can you make a doily
he's
for
starting
our
small.
table?
I'm working on a doily
Yeah,
for
it would be
the
good.
table.
That.
It would like absorb the sound of us hitting the table. A big doily. Maybe you two partner up and you work.
We're gonna form a club. We're gonna do a little community crochet, because
so good.
Yeah, I'm pretty busy. I'm not going to be able to make it.
I don't know. Okay, so there's two things I would say that I really want to help bring into the totem community, especially is helping people with sleep is hard. Like a lot of people have anxious thoughts. They have, there's like a lot going on. There's a lot of stress. So it is really hard. I get it. But when we have community, that's been shown to reduce the time it takes for people to fall asleep because, we've had this amazing speaker, Pete Bombachi, come in. When we are lonely, when we don't have community, our body physically goes into hypervigilance mode. Like it is
so
ramped up because we don't feel safe, even though we are in our modern life. But we have this biological carryover for hundreds of thousands of years where if you feel lonely, you are stressed. So you cannot sleep
automatically.
Automatically. So crochet community is really huge, or just feeling connected to your people is one of the best things I think people can do to help with their sleep as well.
I love that. I think about things like we just had a dinner party for our birthdays on Saturday, and we played games and things like that, and we all laughed a lot. And I think of nights like that, don't you agree that you go to bed way more relaxed? And then I joke with my friends, like we said, we wake up with a smile on our face. And that's 100% in my opinion, because we had all those good hormones, because we were connected for a long period of time. We ate together. So we felt the community versus me on a weeknight when I'm watching like scary shows and then I come up and I'm locking the doors and I'm checking the doors many times.
Awful.
Right? So stupid. But I do it. But it's a completely different feeling, and I'm sure my sleep on the nights when I'm with my friends and having fun is so much better. I know it is. That's fascinating.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Awesome. This is very educational. Always learn something when we talk to you. And part one in our recovery series, and part two, we're going to be talking about nutrition, which is great. And we'll continue helping people understand how to recover better.
Thank you.
Thank
you.
And we like to dance on the